Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is an advocate for all things Indigenous. Whether it's food security or voting rights, Tania Cameron is not only pointing out the inequalities, she's working to address them. Most recently, Tania has been organizing for Bearskin Lake First Nation, while the community has been dealing with a pandemic state of emergency. Tania, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Bearskin Lake First Nation, a community of about 400 people, about 600 kilometers north of Thunder Bay, declared a state of emergency in late December. At one point, more than half of the community had contacted COVID-19. What made you feel like you wanted to help?
Well, at the time that the outbreak had started in Bearskin Lake, in my own family, in my own household, my kids came back from school, and one of them was notified of a contact. And sure enough, on Christmas Day, we got the word that my son was tested positive for COVID. So we were in immediate lockdown. I posted on my social media. Immediately, I had offers from friends and family to bring supplies, groceries, food, whatever I needed to the home. I didn't need it, but I was grateful for it. At that same time, I'm watching social media and I see what was happening in Bearskin Lake, where they had just a handful, then overnight it was in the 30s. And I quickly realized it was an outbreak. The chief and council with their health services later declared it. But then I started seeing posts from families in Bearskin Lake putting their needs on their social media page, saying they need groceries or they need firewood. And that really touched me, because here I am in Kenora in isolation, but I have all these available to me. And in the far northern remote communities, it's just not there. And it was quickly becoming a great need in the community. So it was a cry for help that I felt I needed to respond to.
You know, it's a good point. You're so much different from where you or I are compared to the north. You shared a tweet the other day that somebody was kind of being facetious, showing a bag of sugar for about $22, joking they couldn't even afford to have diabetes. I mean, it's a real difference 600 kilometers north of where you and I are.
Yes, the cost of living is just it's incredible. And I know for families that I can't imagine what the cost would be to raise a family, and having the household staples in terms of groceries, that being a huge challenge.
When you started the fundraising campaign, what was your goal at first?
I personally, I was hoping for $4,000 or $5,000. I got permission from chief and council to go ahead and start collecting funds for their community. I reached out to Fresh Market Foods in Sulikout, and they were quick to partner because they get Nutrition North subsidy to help offset some of the huge shipping costs into the far north. So that was my goal, $4,000 or $5,000. By the end of the first night, when I launched it on New Year's Eve, I was at just a little over 11,000.
Where are things at today?
Well, I did my bookkeeping this morning, and I've collected $34,500 in donations through crowdfunding on social media. I also, to add to that, is the Canadian Tire gift cards of $5,000 for supplies. And also a new friend of mine, Harper in Keewaywin First Nation, the community sent me $21,570 that Rain fundraised in her community. So we are at a total raised of $61,133.
Absolutely incredible. Well done. I was going to ask you, can you tell us a bit about Rain Harper from Keewaywin First Nation?
Yeah, so I launched again on New Year's Eve, December 31st, I launched the campaign She sent me a message saying, I'm sending you a $500 donation. Please add it to your list of donors. And I said, sure, definitely. Thank you so much. And then later that evening, she said, I think I'm going to try to do what you're doing. And I said, great. If you need help, if you want to follow what I'm doing, that by all means, go ahead. And the next day she posted that she raised $1,000. And I was like, yay, way to go. Like, keep going. And that's amazing. And then last week, I get an email from her chief, Michael Kakigamic. And he's like, I believe you've met one of our youth, Rain Harper. Well, she raised just a little over $10,000 in the community. And Kiwewin administration is going to match what she raised. So that was such an incredible goal that she set in her mind, and just the impact and of her as a young person, and Kiwewin's a small community. So to raise that kind of money out of that community, I was just really touched by the people in Kiwewin.
Yeah, huge shout out to Rain. Absolutely incredible and heartwarming. What were you hearing from the community in terms of needs? I mean, many of the key players there, the chief, people who help run the community, had all come down with COVID.
Yeah, so that was alarming. And I was involved in my own First Nations pandemic planning. And we talked about the need for as many community members to be aware of what the plan is in case, in the worst case scenario, where the leadership, where the pandemic team, all the staff are, might get sick, and then who can step in to fill the need in terms of carrying out the pandemic response plan. And again, that was like worst case scenario. And this is exactly what was playing out in Bearskin Lake. Leadership had to isolate. Either they contracted COVID, or a family member in their household contracted. Staff members, the usual workers in the community, all were in isolation. So they really had to call on able-bodied adult people in their community to step up. Well, those that tested negative, to step up and get out to help the community for everything, getting food to the doors, checking in on households, checking in on the elders and the ones with little children. What do you need? How can we help you? Chopping wood. Like when you think of 90% of the households there depend on firewood, and their usual guys that they contract to do that kind of work were down. I mean, that was just an alarming situation as it was unfolding. And that's why one of my big goals was I want to get a really good log splitter into the community. So I asked my brother-in-law, Leslie, who's the former chief in Wabascang, like, what do you recommend? He's like, well, we had this, and it was a real workhorse. It's a lot of money, though. And it was like he said, it was about $2,000. And sure enough, I put that goal on social media. I want to send this. And even if it costs me $1,000 to send up north, I need to send this up there. So people heard, people responded, and we were able to get the big high quality log splitter into the community. I just got a picture from someone in the community that they're using it today. Like, they're so grateful for it, and it's a game changer.
I think we've all seen the photos. So many people had to come together to make this all possible, and we saw those photos of the skidoos all heading in. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so, and that's something that I saw on social media. One of my social media friends, John Cutfeet on Twitter, he was part of that snow machine caravan that took up supplies. When the leadership, when the families put out a call for help, it was immediate. In the Indigenous communities and some of the towns here in the Northwestern Ontario, we knew immediately that we had to act. We also knew that they were calling on the federal government to send in help, but it wasn't immediate enough for some of us that were sitting, behind our screens watching this all unfold. So the response by people in Muskrat Dam to send firewood, to send people just to go split the wood for the homes, And these people that ventured to Bearskin, they all have families. They all know that they have to keep a safe distance and do what they can to support their neighboring First Nation, because they have to protect their own families. They have to protect their own communities as well. So I was really emotional during that whole time. And I know part of it's because my son had COVID and we were living in isolation. But I also knew when I saw moms post what they needed and how stressful it was, I really felt that. When Saul Mamakwa, he's the MPP for Keewatin, he did a live with Darlene Beardy, one of the moms that were in isolation with the baby in the home, and they all tested positive. That really sealed the deal for me in terms of I'm going to do what I can. I heard the emotion in her voice, the real need and the fear. And I thought, well, I can't do a lot. I can't go up there, but I could use my social media. I could let people know that they need help and hope that people will send me a few dollars to support Bearskin Lake.
Well, absolutely amazing, Tania. And we're going to talk a bit more about that and why some people refer to you as the potato lady. We just have to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face with Tania Cameron. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Tania Cameron, and we've been talking about her fundraising efforts for Bearskin Lake First Nation, where more than half the community had tested positive for COVID-19 just after Christmas. And Tania, tens of thousands of dollars, as you say, was raised. Can you tell us who were some of the people donating? And I also understand there was a rather famous person who reached out with a donation as well.
Yeah, so a lot of the people that donated were essentially strangers and new friends now on social media. I posted the fundraising campaign on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And so that a lot of these people, I don't know, we have about 310 donors that raised the 34,000, well, in total of the 61,000. So I don't know a lot of these people. One of the counselors in Bearskin Lake launched a GoFundMe, and we've been sharing that on Twitter. And one evening, Sharon Anshkineb tweeted that Ryan Reynolds liked her tweet for the GoFundMe fundraising campaign. And then sure enough, on the GoFundMe page, there was a $5,000 donation from the Deadpool guy.
I guess I don't know if you've confirmed that it's him, but I don't know how many other Ryan Reynolds might be able to just drop a $5,000 donation.
Well, we know that it's a verified like on Twitter, so we firmly believe that this is the man that sent in that $5,000 donation.
Amazing. Before the break, we also mentioned that some have referred to you as the potato lady. Can you tell us a bit about how you became known as that? Yeah, it's funny. I was out shopping for Bearskin Lake at one of the stores here in Kenora, and when I gave the clerk my status card for the tax exemption, she looked at my card and she's like, "Oh, you're the potato lady." So I laughed because I don't know if I'll ever live that name down. But at the start of the pandemic, it was quite clear, well, here in Kenora, how sensitive the food system was. And we had a lot of bare shelves in our grocery stores. So that was quite alarming. And when I was scrolling my social media, I was on the marketplace and I saw that there was a farm selling potatoes just outside of Winnipeg. And I thought, well, that's 2-hour drive. And it was $15 for a 50-pound bag. And I thought that was a great deal. And of course, me being me, I posted, "Hey, is there anyone here in Kenora that wants to get in on this deal? I'm going in with my truck. I'm going to grab a few bags." I did not anticipate the amount of people sending me $15 to grab them a bag. I believe we left Kenora and with 2 vehicles, a trailer, and 2 First Nations showed up with their trucks, and we brought out 7,200 pounds of potatoes. And that's where it started.
The next potato run was something around 13,000. In the end, I ended up doing 6 potato runs into Northwestern Ontario. That total was 185,000 pounds of potatoes in 6 potato runs. So the equivalent of 6 semi-truckloads. And that went to all the towns in Northwestern Ontario and over 30 First Nations. So that was quite the experience that I totally didn't anticipate would grow to.
Another awesome effort. These efforts, Tania, have come during this pandemic, which has hit many First Nations hard. What does it say to you that fundraisers like this are needed to help during these times?
Yeah, so with the pandemic, there were a lot of people laid off, a lot of people that seen their wage gone or significantly lower. And when I did the potatoes, it wasn't just First Nations people reaching out for it. There were a lot of non-Indigenous people in the towns reaching out to me to get this deal. And some of them would start to tell me, they got laid off, that they're really struggling. And I would say, you know what, there's no need to tell me your story if you don't want to share. One woman wrote that she's so embarrassed to ask. And I said, you just tell me you need potatoes and you're going to get a bag of potatoes. Because for everyone that was reaching out to get in on the deal, there were a lot more people on my social media stepping up to say, I'm going to sponsor 10 bags, or I'm going, some people were sending $500 for me to give bags to families and elders in the communities. It was just an incredible wave of generosity of people that knew to lend a hand where help was needed. And that really spoke to the feeling of community, that we need to take care of each other as much as we rely on the government to help us go through the pandemic with the financial resources. We also rely on each other as neighbors and as a caring community to say, well, let's do this together. And it was just a really beautiful thing that I had not intended and had no idea it would grow to be that way. And we also helped 3 farms. So I started off with 1 farm. It caught the attention of a national media outlet. And after that came out, I had 2 other farms in Manitoba reach out to say, can you help us? We have this whole storehouse. We have no market. Our usual market is on lockdown, and they needed help. And so they weren't giving the potatoes for free, but they were giving just an amazing price. So we helped the farms and the farms helped us. And that really was a beautiful thing.
Well, I'm sure thousands of people are grateful to have you as one of their neighbors. Tania, there was another fundraiser you did, this one for menstrual products. We often hear about the need for these drives in Nunavut or far north places. This one, though, seemed kind of like a clear example of discrepancy, and I think we could say discrimination against First Nations youth. Can you talk about that fundraiser?
Yeah, so last fall, the Ontario government announced a partnership with Shoppers Drug Mart that they were going to give free menstrual products to Ontario students. And I thought that was wonderful news, because that could be a barrier to any student that is in need of such products. That could be a barrier to their education. So I immediately said, well, I hope this includes First Nations schools, because the need exists whether you live on reserve or not. Saul Memekwa, again, the MPP in here in Ontario, he asked the question in the legislature, and we quickly learned that no, First Nations on reserve students were exempt from this free menstrual products. I was really disappointed. And I really stewed on it for a few days and had conversations with some people who said, Tania, can you just launch this drive? And I thought, okay, let's see what we can do. And I put it out again on my social media, and I was just bombarded with people right across the province and even the country sending products, sending money so we can buy products. Again, I partnered with Fresh Market Foods again and say, I'm receiving all this money. I'm going to send it to you. for the products, and again, they use their federal subsidy to help with the shipping costs into the far north communities. Is just responding where there's a gap, where the provincial government failed to fill in a gap. I stepped in, and so many others reached out and sent in. I was all through November, December, receiving shipments into my mailbox of menstrual products from right across the country.
Again, just another amazing effort. Tania, we just have to step aside for another quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face with the superhero Tania Cameron. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Tania Cameron. And Tania, you seem like a natural-born advocate. What fuels your passion for this work?
I've been fortunate enough to have amazing work here in Northwestern Ontario with different Indigenous organizations. And it sounds corny, but I really do have a heart for our Indigenous communities. I feel motivated. I see where so much work is being done, and I wish to support the good works in our First Nations communities and our Indigenous organizations. I'm just committed to our communities.
This is, some of the things you've done just during the pandemic, but you've been doing this work for a great majority of your life.
I have been introduced to this kind of work since I was a teenager. I had the support of a very good parents, a mom and dad who, we discussed different current events and certainly discussed different things happening in the community. So they always supported me when I wanted to do things in my community, and I've carried that through my adulthood into my present life now. And I hope I'm passing that on to my children as well, because my kids and my husband lifted so many bags of potatoes for me in that since March 2020.
Well, and I think as we saw with Rain there, you're passing this on to a whole new generation as well.
Yes, it's so important. It's the power that we have in ourselves. And I learned at a young age at a youth conference, actually, some woman said, don't ever sit back in your community and think, oh, someone should be doing this, someone should be doing that. Sit back and say, could I do this? Could that be something I can do? And I do that. I practice that right from the hop. So I'm always glad to help.
Well, you absolutely do. That's a fantastic way to end the show. Tania, thanks so much for all this work that you do and for being with us on the show. We're grateful to have you here with us.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this week. You can catch up on any episodes you may have missed by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. This episode and all of our past episodes as well are also available as podcasts. You can find those at aptnnews.ca/face-to-face podcast. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us this week. Have a great night. We'll see you back here next week.